I went to Mexico with your wife and Brad.
Oh,
We used to
okay.
be in the same house.
Okay,
That's the only way I know. I've never actually met you.
okay, good.
Yeah,
Well, it's nice to be here and we can reconnect. So,
yeah. Or actually, that was Knox. Sorry, Knox.
yeah, Knox County.
Yeah.
Yep. We've done it a couple times. Trying to think if there was a time that they haven't done without me too. There must have been. Okay, and tell me your names.
Julie, Josh Scobin.
Okay,
Your dad, there's also his history.
okay, very good. All right, I know you guys.
Hang out here.
So we'd like to start with a word of prayer and then we're going to review our vision statement. Try to keep that top of mind so we know what we're trying to do, trying to accomplish here. So, is there anyone who wants to volunteer for a prayer?
I will.
While you're standing up, thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered together. We're grateful to be parents to such wonderful, beautiful, and amazing kids, and we're grateful to have friends that they can gather with and learn together with. We're grateful for all the mentors in the school and for all the efforts that they put toward mentoring and toward caring about our kids. And we're grateful for Heather and Jackie and the special efforts that they put in to the school, and grateful for the love that they show our kids. And please bless that this night will be blessed and that we'll be inspired to know ways that we can better serve the people that we have charge over. And we're grateful for James and his preparation, and please bless him and his family. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. How's it going? Well,
Peachy. Well, watermelon, actually.
all right, let's read our vision. I wonder if somebody that's next to the camera can read that for us. Declan. Can I read it?
Yes, I do.
Hands out what copies I had, so go ahead.
Our vision, homes filled with the spirit of learning. Inspired mentors, inspiring greatness and excellence. Youth engaging in a grand adventure. We have great missions to fulfill. We are training, sacrificing now to be ready then. We each own the responsibility for our own education. We read greatly, discuss deeply, study diligently, serve faithfully, and play wholeheartedly. Every book, project, presentation, discussion, and class moves us one step closer to readiness. Both focused effort and uplifting recreation are important parts of our preparation. We are connected to God, to family, and to our fellow men. We look forward to the future days when opportunities and preparation meet. A new generation of servant leaders, understanding freedom, restoring freedom, and extending freedom to the generations that follow.
What kind of a world would it be if we could accomplish that with one student or with 10 students? Right? It'd be a totally different world. One family, 10 families. So, some of you maybe didn't know the title of the class today, so if you're wondering why you're back in elementary school learning how to read a book, some of you knew better and you came anyway. So tell me why, when you saw this, if you saw this as the title, why did you still want to come? This seems a little bit elementary.
So from some previous experience I had with a program, trying to read the classics like the Odyssey, the Iliad, things like that, there was a book that they had, I forget the name of the author, but it's How to Read a Book.
Mortimer Adler, probably. Right?
Thank you, that's exactly who it was, Mortimer Adler. And the idea is that we have a couple of different ways to approach reading a book. And the first way is to be able to determine if the book is actually going to be worth your time to read. It's kind of like a skim reading throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next methodology is a little more in-depth and how to pull information out of it. And so when I saw the title of the class tonight, How to Read a Book, it piqued my curiosity. having already had a little bit of experience with that.
Good, all right, thanks for sharing that. So, there are levels to learning how to read a book, right? And we're not likely talking about elementary school, because that's not part of our school. So there's a different level that we're anticipating being able to get to tonight. Okay, that's good, thank you. Anybody else?
I came for the second half of the title,
It's
but
not
you
up
didn't put
there.
it on the board,
No,
so.
it's not part of it.
The second half said something genius like, for parents who have a lot of time restraints, or something amazing like that.
Have my time to read more.
Yeah.
When you're busy.
All right, I'll put the rest up.
Okay, I feel better.
I can't remember the exact wording, but something like this, right? Right, okay, so there's some idea about when I do have time, how can I make the most of it? Okay, I like that. Anybody else? What brought you here tonight? Just curiosity? Okay.
Cassandra brought me.
I'll say
I got
it.
some paper. Does anybody need a pen? If you have notes, you can just use your own notes too.
I'll say for another reason why I came tonight is, I enjoy these monthly gatherings and trying to learn, but more than that, seeing how hard Millie is working at getting the most out of her time here. I'm here to try and get all the tools that I can to be able to put the effort in to help her,
Okay,
so.
so it's not just about you. There are other important people involved with you being able to learn how to read a little bit more effectively. That's good. Okay, on your sheet, on the hand over towards the right hand, maybe up a little bit above midline, draw a star. Draw a wall, and then a direction, a path to that wall. And then draw you. You will be judged on the quality of your art in the class, as you can tell.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
I better focus.
This is where you are today. There's some kind of goal you have in mind with this. The star represents your goal. If you're here, you're trying to get here. What is your goal with knowing how to read a book? And knowing why to read a book. So just brainstorm some ideas, write those down. What is this for you right now? Your aim, your goal. If you could make that happen, life would be awesome. What would that be?
So for me, I think the ideal would be to read a book well enough that you can retain the important parts. And
Okay.
then and have those important parts shape your path in the future.
So not just retention, but some future utility,
Yeah.
okay?
Along those same lines, just that book and the content becomes part of me, how I operate, how I think.
element of transformation, the expectation is I'm gonna spend some time with this book, I want it to make a difference in my life. Okay, like it. Who else has some things, what, anybody?
On those same lines, I love questions answered. Like when I read a book, many times the question's unrelated to the topic of the book, but an answer comes. And then I'm able to strengthen relationships and apply.
Okay, answer to personal questions, something's going on in my life, I'd really like to know some answers, yeah.
And I feel like the more knowledge I get and the more I learn, the easier it is when my kids are struggling with different things or just discussions about randomly, the more I've learned, even if it's just like a little story, like for an example from a certain book or something I've read, if it's stuck with me, then it's easier to have discussions when the more knowledge you have and you're able to bring different examples and different stories, and it makes it a little easier to answer certain questions, I guess.
Okay,
Answer
So-
questions, yeah. But
what about be able to teach when the moment's right? Know something to say that would make a difference, like that? You had your hand raised.
Yeah, for me, it is like, what is it that I need to become aware by reading this book? Like, what do I need to become aware for me at this time? What is it that I need to grow on at this time at a personal level? So awareness is key for me.
Okay, awareness, some new knowledge, some information that might be helpful, okay?
Just deeper understanding of what I read. I struggle with only being able to pull out kind of the obvious and surface level stuff, but I know that there are a lot of authors that put a lot deeper meanings behind some of the stuff they write.
Okay, nobody wants to read just to have fun?
I mean, that's a lot of fun
Is that
too.
on the list anywhere?
please, add it in there.
I put, well, I do, but like, how can I apply this to my life? That's usually like, I'm like, dissect it, be like, pull out all the stuff that works for me, like,
Okay, good. Is it okay if I put entertainment, is that all right?
Sure,
Just for fun?
it's a hobby.
Yes.
Hobby? What have fun while reading?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
This all sounded so serious, I thought, this can't be fun, right? Sounds like work. All right, any others?
Yeah, we were having a conversation with our son, and he was kind of bringing up the idea that, well, if I don't remember anything that I'm learning, then what's the point? Why bother? And I relate to that because I feel like I have an exceptionally poor memory despite all my,
Careful, you might be right.
and here's the thing, I may not remember, like if someone said, what was that book about? I'm likely gonna be like, but I've discovered in my own life that despite not really remembering, like in a way that I can repeat and say, oh, well, it said this and this and this, not, it changes you, and you have things to say that you wouldn't have to say otherwise. I might not even know why I know something or how I know it, or where I knew it from, but I know stuff, and I can think about stuff, and I can judge things, I can weigh things, and I can come up with things to say and teach things, and I don't even know how. So even if you don't feel like it's really helpful, yeah.
So even though we might not be able to articulate something that we feel like, oh, here's, 10-point bulletin outline of what the author said, right?
Yeah.
If we can use that as a supplement to our life experience and then be able to pull those ideas together and share, that's really useful. So we have a database or repository somewhere, and in the moment, we just trust that we'll be able to cobble enough together to be of some use for somebody here. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I do need to confess to being a little bit deceitful in my title, okay? Because I am gonna change it. This is an important change. I don't want to read a book, because reading gets in the way of my education. I do want to learn a book. And that actually opens up a lot of different tools for me. For one thing, I'm free to not necessarily have to read it from cover to cover. I know that's hard for some people to hear, but once I get what I need out of a book and I've learned it, I'm good in that moment. I don't have to be constrained unnecessarily by going through the motions of reading. So that is my perspective. I want to figure out, how can I learn this book? I've got this book. I know there's something really useful. How can I extract what I need from it as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and have a great, amazing experience with it? And sometimes that's going to mean you need to read every book, because it is full of a lot of things that you need. And the way that the author writes is, I mean, it just resonates with you, and you read everything. And sometimes you get to the introduction, and most nonfiction books, the introduction basically tells you what's going to be in the book. So you get to the introduction, you got, okay, I think I got a pretty good idea what's going on here. I could read some of it, get some more details, but I pretty much have the gist of what the author's going to be talking about. If learning the book frees me up to be more flexible in my relationship with what I'm trying to read. It also makes me a little bit more picky about what I do not pick up and read. Okay, so it's okay if I change that. Sorry for being a little deceptive, but I needed a little bit of performance going on, right? So there's my reveal. All right, so what's your aim? These are all great aims, by the way. You know, we could read to feel something. There's something important I need to feel, and there are books that I read just to get in touch with something that's important to me, right? What are some other fatty things? To find not only answers, but to find questions. Sometimes we don't know what's going on, we don't even know the right question to ask. And when we're reading, that question can pop into our mind. And then we can go find answers. Sometimes when we read, an idea comes into our mind that suggests, hey, you remember so-and-so? You need to go ask your question to them, because they have the answer. So that inspiration can flow through the words of a book, completely unintended by an author, but reading can open up that channel for us. Sometimes it'll give you ideas about what to do, a personal application, give you ideas about how to help or serve other people. So those are all aims that we could have when we want to be able to read a book, to learn a book, to develop this skill. So this wall represents things that are in the way from us being able to go from here to there. So next brainstorm, what's in your way? What's keeping you from achieving your aim or your goal? What are the obstacles right now?
Sleep. Good sleep when you're dead.
In fact, people die in bed. It's a dangerous place to be. You don't want to do it too long.
Things that we feel like we need to be doing are obstacles. How many of you, who of you are going on that on the retreat, the mom's retreat tomorrow, and have been reading the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry? And I feel like I've learned a ton from that book. I've not learned a ton, but it's brought to my attention, you know, and made me think a lot. And we are in a magnificent hurry all of the time to do things that we feel like we have to be doing. And the book points out at one point, he's like, we're in a hurry, we're in such a hurry, and at the end of the day, we oftentimes don't do any of the things that really matter to us. We skipped all of those things, you know, and we did all the other things.
Okay, I'm sped up, life's going fast, there's too much to do, not enough time. Too much to do, not enough energy. Whatever the not enough is. There's way more that I want to read than I can read, time in the day. What else is in the way?
Sometimes my own, a lot of times it's my own thoughts. So even if I am reading, I notice a lot of times all of a sudden my eyes are going through it, but my brain's thinking of other things completely, like, and I have to go back and read it again, and sometimes 2 or 3 times before my brain has actually focused on what I'm reading. So
Okay,
that's something that
So distractions,
yeah.
mind wandering. Okay, yeah, I can relate to that. What else? What else is keeping you from getting to go? What's in your way?
My head hurting or my eyes hurting. Those are really big ones for me for reading.
Ignorance.
Tell me more about that, Jeremy. Ignorance.
Just not knowing that I need to know something, or feeling the need to know something.
Okay, it could be that my mind is wandering because what I'm able to put into it is either too easy, I'm reading too slow for my mind, it could be processing a lot faster if I read faster. Or it could be that the degree of difficulty is a little bit higher than what I'm ready for. So that level of ignorance keeps me from accessing the ideas or the thoughts or the wisdom, the knowledge that could be mine if I had a better foundation. Okay, that's good, I like it.
I know. Inspiration. When you're like
That's keeping you
inspired.
from, I'm sorry.
No, it's keeping you, because if you don't feel inspired towards something,
So
you don't
lack it.
do the thing. That's when all of these hurry things go away, because you keep doing your to-do list until you're like excited about something, and then when you're excited about something, then you pursue it. So, like if you don't have enough forethought or faith to open up a book with the hope that you'll feel excited and inspired by something, then it's like, oh, I just don't have time for that. You know? Sometimes it takes someone giving you a recommendation, like, this is amazing, this is so great, and then you're like, okay, I'll try it, I'll look it up, and maybe you find something, and then the inspiration sucks you into it in a way that gives you this great experience.
Okay, so lack of motivation, lack of faith that it's gonna be worth your while. There's some barrier that you really don't think you're gonna get the value out of it to go put the effort into trying to do that. That makes sense, right? What else? What else is keeping us? Yeah.
For me, it's probably my mindset, because I have a hard time concentrating if my house isn't clean when things are back where they belong. And so I feel like that should be, I tell myself that that's my priority, and that reading is, like extra. And it's so hard to get to the extra part, because by the time I'm done with like dishes and cooking, and you've been paged 20 times in a day, you're just like, and now I don't have enough time to get sucked into it. You know what I'm saying? So they're just like, oh, but then tomorrow. So it goes.
Well, and along those, just too many responsibilities that are pressing, because they're a lot louder. Some of those responsibilities are a lot louder than the peaceful time with the book. That's kind of like fairy tale land.
meals, laundry, and
Uh-huh.
who's gonna do those things?
Crying kiddos.
You almost have to convince that that's real.
I mean.
I don't know, maybe not at your house.
Look at
Maybe
these
you have the fairy that I
excuses.
need to have.
I want one too.
Maybe you don't wanna come over to my house, cause it's really messy.
And you're not eating food, and your family's starving.
All right, any others? What else do you think of that's keeping you from your goal?
I think just habit. Like, I think if you can get to the point where you've done it enough that it's kind of like a little habit. Like, I go through phases where sometimes I'm really good about doing some reading, especially right before bed, and it's a great way to get me ready to sleep and all that. And then other times I'm just like, no, I'm too tired. But then I find when I actually just do it, and that I'm not as tired as I thought I was, and I really do enjoy reading a little bit when I have those moments. And so I think some of it is just going back to it and trying to develop that habit and keep that habit going.
All right, I want you to put your, so your psychologist hat. Okay, you're watching your son or daughter that's going to ascend or might be going to ascend. Now it's them here instead of you. What are their obstacles? What's keeping them from becoming great readers, loving to read, sitting down with a book, tackling hard reads, wherever their age is in life that they're trying to get to, whatever phase, what's in their way?
Honestly, a lot of the same things.
Is it the same things?
A lot of
It
them.
takes more energy to read a physical book, I think. Like, it does take more energy than just a lot of the other mindless activities that they just kind of do.
Well, I feel like maybe there's a lack of motivation there. We
Okay.
used to not have as much entertainment, and so reading a book wasn't like so much more for us. But they have so many other options that it's like, you know, and hard to like excite them over, you know, their own imagination. It's so much better.
Well, they have access to so much passive entertainment.
Yeah.
They don't have to do anything for it. It's just,
No.
they don't have to work for it, but
Mindless.
reading a book, you're actually gonna have to kind
Yeah.
of work for it, so it's not passive entertainment
I
anymore.
get them excited, yeah, about, yeah.
I think at the very root of that is a relationship with God and listening to the Holy Ghost. Because in my experience, the things that are the most exciting and inspiring, the things that drive me the most have been the things that have been the things that where I've been driven by the Spirit to do. And I think you can get that inspiration in a lot of ways. Like, you can be reading a book, learning a book, and you can encounter something that excites you and drives you, you know. But I still think that's the Spirit doing that. And so I think a lack of a relationship, or even just the time and the space, because there's so much entertainment and there's so many distractions and there's so many things filling that space, and where you should be listening and having a connection with God. I think that's the ultimate motivator, and the ultimate exciter, you know. I think our kids need more quiet time where there's nothing happening.
Okay, so they may not appreciate that this is a path to connection with God. They may not see that's actually the aim. Right? It may just feel like there's an adult in my life that wants me to do something that I don't want to do. So it's have to, need to, must, should. But this is my duty. I'm being assigned to do this. doesn't feel like they believe if I do this, there's going to be a connection with somebody that's really important. This is how we learn that process, right? So, to be confused about why should I do it? Does it make sense? Your why for them might be different, or their why for themselves. Right? Okay, like that.
And also, along the same lines, if you've never had that experience with God, then you don't know what that's like. Because in our world, sometimes, you know, religious practices and things can feel boring to our kids. Like, they're not as exciting as our entertainment. And so the thought that being with God and being inspired with Him could really be exciting is hard to conceptualize unless you've had the experience.
So we've answered what the aim is. We talked about it. We talked about what are obstacles, what's in the way. We talk about how. What happens if our how is not aligned with our aim? So that's a little bit what we were just talking about, right? So sit down, read this book, write a report, and you're gonna get an A. Is a how. As you're reading, you need to look to see what the teacher's gonna ask you on the test, because you need to pass the test at the end. As you're reading, that's a how. That's a question that's in your mind. What's gonna be on the test? What does the teacher want me to read? Right? That's a how to get to an aim. But if we're trying to tell them it's about transformation, and they're reading it to satisfy an assignment, you see the disconnect, right? How do we make that connection match the aim, the why with the how?
Are you saying you can change someone else's aim and goal? Like, we have our own reasons why we want to be learning a book. But how, are you saying I could change my students' reason why they're reading a book?
I don't know if we can change it, we can suggest changes, maybe, right? If we think there's a bigger reason than get an A at the end, that's great. GPA. If that's all their goal is, then maybe we need to help them raise their sights a little bit, because that's not super fulfilling, and when they're done with high school, no one cares about grades anymore, so then what's their aim? They don't have one. There's no external incentive, nothing internal has been built into them, so they're done with their education when they graduate.
Well, I talked to my daughter about this, and I'm like, you're going to school for, this is your career, like, at the end, and that's gonna apply to your career, so you're learning all this, you're gonna need to retain that, cause it is applicable to the rest of your life, like, it's knowledge you'll need for the rest of your life. So don't study it for that test, study it to retain it, cause you have to repeat this and know this knowledge for forever, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
So the cynic in me is gonna say something, and so
Okay.
don't be offended, like, how much do I remember from high school?
Well, it depends on what you're learning, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on what you're learning. If I'm just learning to pass the test, it's kind of there temporarily, long enough to
Yeah.
remember.
And I would say you need to retain everything, but there are some things like.
So now I'll put the idealist back on. That's exactly what we want. They're gonna spend how many hours and years in high school? When they're done, why shouldn't it mean something really important to them? Why shouldn't it carry so much value that they can look back at that time, you know, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and just say, I'm so grateful I had that experience.
I think it's really important to instigate curiosity, because curiosity leads to the love of learning and to want to learn something because they're curious about it. And I think getting there can provide a lot of experiences to get them even excited about it. So then how they go about it will align with their goal. Like, I'm curious, I want to know why this or why not. And so for my girls, sometimes they get curious about something and I feed it like right away. I don't want that to go away, right? And so I'm just like, oh wow, I wonder why. And so then I ask all these questions and I'm like, hey, well, should we go and drive somewhere to learn a little bit more about it? Like, do you want to draw it? Do you want to play it? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to figure out where would this curiosity continue to go on? And each one of them is very different from each other. And, you know, it's just getting to know your kids and what it drives them and gets them excited to like fit that in, you know? But keep that curiosity going. I think eventually that's going to last whatever they want to learn. And they'll remember because they want to.
Okay, good, okay. Thank you. So, we're actually on the same team, right? I totally want that for them, but, now, I don't wanna give somebody an assignment just so they can check it out and say, yeah, I read that book, great. I want them to be a different person, having experienced that.
I think what you're trying to do is try to create the love of learning so that you're always learning no matter what age you are.
Yeah, and why? What's the utility in that? They develop a love of learning long-term, like after high school, after they move out of your house, or start their own family, what is the utility for them if they can learn that here?
Life's ever changing, there's always something to learn.
You can gain confidence that you can pick up a new skill, whether it's changing the brakes in your car or reading the Constitution, like you just know that you can learn it.
Yeah, yeah, so their future looks a lot different than our future looks to us, and has been for us, right? And for my parents and my grandparents. My dad stayed, well, he had basically two different jobs my whole childhood. He was a teacher and he tried to be an insurance salesman for a year, but he wasn't very good. So he went back to teaching, right? So, but he stayed basically at the same school for almost his whole career. And grandparents, my grandpa worked on the railroad, and that was his one job for his whole career. My generation that started to change, our generation that started to change a little bit. There's multiple jobs, multiple career paths. What does it look like for our children with AI, right?
I don't know.
It's changing so
Honestly,
fast.
I don't know.
So technology is automating so many jobs now. In 5-10 years, we almost can't anticipate what jobs are gonna be completely obsolete. And so, if they're just going to school where they're given an assignment, they have to work the problem and turn in the right answer over and over and over again, that's not giving them a skill set that's gonna be valuable later on when they have to completely revamp their careers. I gotta go learn a total new skill. Right?
As my dad used to say, you gotta be able to shuck and jive as things come at you.
That's right. Excuse me. All right, so I want to talk about that a little bit more because let me explain it this way. I want to talk about how and why alignment. Why that's so important, because if we get our how is different from our why, we're gonna get really frustrated because we just can't seem to get to our aim. And then we'll circle back to see, what this means for us personally, right? So I'm gonna just kind of scan out just a little bit. bigger picture. I just want to talk about three primary educational systems. They all have different whys, different goals, different aims, and their hows line up with those aims to accomplish something. So the first one is, this is actually most prevalent in our society. So you go to a university, the goal is for you to become effective at what you do. So there's a skill set that you need to acquire, so that when you are hired, you get a job, there's a career, you can be good in that job. You can do the work that's required. So the goal is to be able to become an expert in something. So you go, this is a major in college, you want to be an engineer, lawyer, doctor, there's some expertise that you want, and you want to be effective in that expertise. You want to be able to use that. Option 2. So here, when we're reading something, there's a way that we read, a way that we're trained to read, and what we're trained to read that aligns with this goal. So we want to be able to summarize. It's about efficiency, bullet points. We read something and we need to be able to dissect that and analyze it and summarize it, and we're good. So the material is typically going to be some kind of textbook or case study, something like that, right? So somebody has already decided what is the body of knowledge that you need to be an expert. Here's a book that covers that body of knowledge. You need to memorize it and be tested on it. So as you're reading to figure out, okay, what do I need to know that's going to be on a test that can show I'm an expert so I can be effective in that subject area. That's one path. Another path is, when I read, I just want to find truth. I just want to know what's true. So I have a very different question. I'm not necessarily worried about how effective or what skill set I'm going to need. I just want to know what's true, what's false. This is typically a path if you're going into academia, into a clergy, some kind of position like that. What you're going to read instead of textbooks is going to be a canonized list of classics, right? So we're going to read authors, we're going to read, not looking to summarize, but reading to compare, analyze. What we value here is knowledge. What we value here is power, as in the power to be effective, to accomplish something, to have a skill that you're using, right? So we value power, we value knowledge. The way we read, how we read, is different than this pathway. Let's look at one more. So instead of truth, maybe what I really want to know is what's right. And those are sometimes used interchangeably, but we don't make a distinction. So what is true versus what is right? We go to the store and it's true that that dress is on sale and it's a great deal, right? But is it right to buy that dress? It's true that it's on sale and it's a great deal, but my bank account says that's probably not a good thing to buy right now, right? Or it's just not my color. That helps kind of distinguish between something that is true, broadly applicable, but not necessarily right for me right now in my life at this time. And I propose that that's what a leader needs to be trained to find, because this is about application. So how do we read looking for the right thing versus the true thing versus, let's just figure out how to be effective. What questions are we asking? So where I value power here, knowledge here, I'm gonna value liberty, which is learning to do what I should do and being able to do that. Not what I want to necessarily, but what I should do, and then doing it.
Self-governance.
Okay, so being able to self-govern, having probably an expertise, but more broadly applicable to that. Right? So what am I gonna read here? And how am I gonna read it? The question I'm asking here is what's gonna be on the test? What do I need to show another expert to prove that I have gained the expertise? What did the author mean when he said such and such? What was the author trying to say? Let's compare that to other authors in the same genre, or maybe trying to answer the same question. Which one do we think them approach the truth more closely? What's right for me in my life, my family right now? Is a totally different question. What does this have to teach me? So I'm gonna use this word, but it's different from this list. And the definition that I learned from my mentor was a classic in this respect is something I can read over and over and over again, and each time I get something out of it that's useful, that's applicable to me. And so that could be Plato. It could be Dr. Seuss. It depends on what question I'm trying to answer, what's going on in my life, what am I looking for to apply.
Well, technically, it could be one of those textbooks or one of those canonized
Yeah.
lists as well, because you would read it completely different
Right.
if that was your
Right.
motive.
But you can see how the how aligns with the why. What are you trying to accomplish? The way you approach the book is really leading up to that. If I'm trying to find out what is right for me in my life, and I'm just reading what an expert's telling me and getting tested, it's not going to be, I'm going to be kind of frustrated with that process, right?
I have a thought on this. Is it, in your view, is it progressive or cumulative? I feel like to be an effective leader, as an engineer, you can't hire someone that isn't an expert, right? They can't just come in and write a software program for you.
Right.
And so you can't, as a leader, you can't just hire people that have studied they've read Don Quixote 15 times and they can tell you a lot about the classics, but they don't know something, they don't know a skill. You can't skip it,
Right.
or can you?
So are these mutually exclusive?
No.
Why do you say no?
Well, you look back throughout history and, I'll use Thomas Jefferson as an example. Thomas Jefferson, you could call him an expert in some areas, but he was always curious. He was always learning, looking for the truth of things, and trying to find different ways to apply that knowledge. And so he was kind of a Renaissance man, able to dabble in a lot of different things, but also had some specialization as well.
So I would love to have hired somebody that has this as their pilot, and this is their co-pilot. Right? They got this first, and then they knew how to add this. This doesn't actually take a long time to do if you're good at this. This is your primary skill set. Right? So that would be my answer. I would much rather have a leader who became an accountant, a leader who added to their leadership, dentistry, orthodontics, whatever it might be.
But it's probably okay, even if it isn't in that order, right? If you started with an education like
I hope
this.
so, because that was my order.
I was gonna say.
Right? I did this first and then I learned, oh, maybe I wanna do this. And so I just, after I had done this, it was late in my life.
I think starting with the power, starting with the being effective, and then going over to what's right and the leaders and whatnot is a more challenging path, because you get so, how can I say it? You get so programmed with the being efficient, being effective way of thinking and that way of approaching problems, that it kind of boxes you in, and you have to break out of that to be able to develop the other skills.
Yeah, you have to unlearn some things to go from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
As the leader, you just hire those people. Like, you hire the engineer, you hire the logistics, you hire those.
But here's
If you
the
try to do their job, you can't go about being a leader.
But here's the interesting paradox. I see it all the time in work, where the expert part builds credibility. And you don't get to be the leader, you don't get to be the boss until you've proven that you can do the thing. And that gives you credibility, and it gives you a reputation in the organization you're in. And I see all the time consultants coming into an organization saying, this is how you should do things, and they're, a 21-year-old expert in engineering. It's like, yeah, really? You might have good leadership skills and presentation skills, but until you've done some time, digging the trenches, you're not gonna win a lot of support. So I think it's a bit of a paradox, because oftentimes you don't get to be the leader until you've proven that you're an expert.
Yeah.
Unless you work for the government.
Well, what if you could start at the age of 5, 6, 10,
There you go.
right? Can't go back in time, so I don't have this opportunity, but my kids might have this opportunity, if I can change things for them. So I'm in this transition where, what if they could grow up with this until they're 18 or 20? And then, when it's right for them to get an expertise, they can apply how they learned there, in this area, add this, and now they've got the best of both worlds. It doesn't, I think what you're saying is, it's not impossible to do this first and then add that. I think there are people that can do that. It's just ideal would be, why waste that time? I learned some things. Why can't we start now and then have them add this so that they can be a leader and be an effective leader, have an expertise that they can offer the world. And at some point in the future, they might figure out, oh man, somebody can spend 5 seconds on AI and do this report that I just wrote. I better find something that AI can't do that I can, right? So totally valid point. Thank you.
When I look at our kids right now, the biggest troubles that I see is I see our kids a lot of the times languishing about, or feeling depressed, or feeling like they have a lack of purpose or a lack of reason. And it everywhere. Kids, especially in our culture, just not feeling driven, you know, even in class a lot of times it's like. And so, when you talk about the why and when you talk about these three types of educations, I feel like doing that first on the right side can sometimes make all of the languishing and the depression and the lack of purpose and drive disappear, which opens up the door for expertise, because if you're never going to become an expert if you don't feel in anything, if you don't feel a drive to become an expert, if you're depressed, if you're sad, if you don't have a purpose or a drive. But if you gain that first as a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, then all of a sudden you have an excitement for learning. You know how to learn. You've experienced analyzing something and reading something and having the attention span for it and all those things. And so you get that, and then all of a sudden, oh, I want to be an expert in engineering. And they suddenly know how to learn, they know how to seek that goal. And so it does feel to me as well like that could solve a lot of our whys and the even ability to become an expert.
Yeah. So here, if this is what we grew up like me, and we grew up in this, and we got used to people telling us what we're gonna study, when we're gonna study, how we're gonna read it, what the answer would be, right? All the decisions have been made for us. Here, it offers a little bit of self-sufficiency, right? They become part of the process. Like, what do you think? Where do you think you are? What do you think you need to be working on? And they don't make all the decisions, but if they have a say in the decision, that's a pretty fun place to be. I know that what I have to say matters. I also need to be able to trust a mentor or somebody that's been down this path before. So it's not just what I want, it's also a combination of what other people realize or have some wisdom to offer. Say, I can see you in your future, you're gonna need this. Are you ready to work on it? And we put together a plan to help you get that. And the purpose is, I think, I'm with you, right? The personal life mission, you have something really important to accomplish that you were born to accomplish. And you have gifts and talents that only came in your little package. And education is about figuring out how to take that and unleash it on the world in your unique way to make a difference and accomplish what you were sent here to do. Totally different than K through 12, right? At first grade you read this, second grade you study this, third grade you study this, just like everybody else. It's just a different process, right? So I'm gonna focus here because I think that's a better place to start. And I just want to suggest a couple of tools that can help us read, help us learn a book with this in mind. Well, what's the goal? Is to find out what's right for me. What do I need to, what can I extract from this book?
Bless you.
So, here's a couple of principles to keep in mind. I don't want to be so careful about, I need to be changed. I'm not going to worry actually what the author says. I just want to experience change in my life. I think this is really important. We want to find why that matters to me, how it applies, but also gain the knowledge, the information that's there. I think it's a false choice if it's an either or. We want both. This is the integration of our education into our life. It's just part of our culture. I learned this because that's who I am. That's part of how I go about my life. It isn't separate. I don't go to school and that's where I learn. I come home and I'm done learning. Transformation is about combining those two, integrating them into the same thing. It's just who I am. Information can often be just learn, I'm done. Okay, I learned it, I'm done. Ready to move on. But we want the expertise and we want the transformation. Another big tool. Epiphanies. Ahas. How do we learn best? Learning is about enthusiasm and discipline. Enthusiasm and discipline. Getting excited about it. It's really hard to learn something you're not excited about. It takes a lot more energy and work. But who's in charge of being enthused? Who's in control of being enthused or not?
It's just you.
The person wanting to learn it.
Is it the parent's job to help this?
Oh, it's the kid's job.
Is it the mentor's job? We have a role, right? But ultimately, enthusiasm is a choice. And if we can get to that place where we're excited about it, we generate that excitement. It's not something external to us that causes us to feel that way. We feel it, and then that influences our experience. Do you have a comment?
Yes, for me, if I can like see it with my eyes and I can manipulate it with my hands, I learn best like that. And so if I can envision like me being able to see what it is that I'm learning or like being able to do or create with my hands, that gets me excited. So it almost, for me, the seeing and the manipulating has to like be married to thread it.
If you're really enthused, is it hard for people to tell that you're enthused? It's not, right? You're expressive. What would happen if your kids saw you being enthused about what you're reading? You're so excited about what you just read, you can't wait to share it with somebody.
Yeah.
Or you get so mad about it, you just throw it down. I can't believe they would say that, right? And you become expressive.
Yeah.
Those epiphanies.
I was gonna say, what I've been thinking of a lot through this whole thing is monkey see, monkey do, you know?
Yeah.
What matters more than anything is the example you are showing. So if you are learning, if you are reading, if you are, you know, talking about the things that you are learning, and I think that example to your kids, so even if it doesn't sink in immediately and they're, you know, they're watching, and
Yeah, that's totally true. They're gonna remember a lot more what they see, what they observe, than what they hear. Especially if what they hear doesn't line up with what they observe. Which never happens. I mean, it happens in my house, it doesn't happen in your house, right? So this epiphanal rate, how often are you having epiphanies as you read? Because that epiphany generates enthusiasm, which cements the learning. If our brains are under stress, I really need to get through this. There's a deadline coming up, I'm not sure I'm gonna make it, feeling overwhelmed. There's chemicals get released in our brain that shut down the ability to remember. Under this though, those chemicals enhance our ability to remember. So we want to be in that state where we're excited, we're enthused, we're wanting to do this, we're choosing to do this. That enhances our ability to remember and to learn. All right, third idea. When I'm reading, if I'm thinking about, oh wow, this could really help my neighbor, or this could really help my mom. My dad needs to read this, my son needs to read this. this is what I need to teach in my class. Their lives would be so much better if they would read this and understand it. That's a secondary intention. If we're first looking to improve myself, as I'm reading, what is in here that could help me be a better person? That enhances our ability to remember and learn. It's personal. It's me. And then, once I have that, I can worry about those around me. All right, fourth idea. Riddle and read are the same root word. So when you're reading, you're riddling. There's a mystery you're trying to resolve, and everyone loves a mystery. You're trying to figure out what the riddle is in this book, and how that can apply to me. What's the mystery? Approach it. If I approach it that way, it becomes a lot more memorable, a lot more fun. I remember it more. So it's a riddle. I found this to be a pretty effective way to take notes for this model. Take my piece of paper, split it vertically. On one side, I write to teach, on the other side I write to do. This helps me bridge this inform and transform. So here I'm teaching, this is informational. I'm taking a book, summarizing it. If I were to teach a class on this book, how would I teach it? What would I say? What would I write? What are my notes? So this is the content, and at the same time, I'm getting ideas. They're little drips from heaven. Say, hey, you should probably call your mom. Next time you see your son, give him this message. As you're reading, those kinds of ideas come. Just reading the right way, reading this way, looking for application, causes more of those to happen. All right, so tell me something they learned tonight. We'll wrap up. I got one more thing, but what has been something that you feel like it's been useful, if there has been something? What's an idea you've had about how you can better learn a book and why that might be important?
I like your going through the world for yourself. That's totally. Oh, you gotta read this book. Oh, you gotta read this book.
Which is totally great. After it's just an order, right? But I do this all the time, right? I'm thinking about, I need to remember that book because someday I might need to teach it to somebody. Like, yeah, that's great, but what about right now, right here? Why does that matter to you? How can this help you in your life instead of some future date? This might be useful for somebody, something to try to remember.
I don't know. I feel like the best books are the ones that you do retain and remember. There's a lot of things I forget, but some of the books are always there with you.
Thoughts that come to you tonight? What else?
That is pretty fascinating that you said that learning is a combination of enthusiasm and discipline, and that you can generate your own enthusiasm.
You skeptical?
Well, no, I'm chewing on it. It's pretty cool that you could generate your own enthusiasm. That it's a choice, but that you can choose to generate it inside of yourself.
Well, I love the connection with the epiphanies. You know, it's something like if you choose to be fascinated by something, or mystified by something, or entertained by something, you start having epiphanies. You engage at a different level with other things, and that generates enthusiasm. That's a beautiful understanding.
So here's a thought experiment, okay? You go to Africa, in the bush, or maybe it's Australia, somewhere out in nowhere, right? And you meet a native. Okay, so they've never been to the United States. Their life is out in wherever their wilderness is. That's all they've known all their life. You bring them back to the United States for a trip. You get in the car, you're driving down the freeway. You're going a little bit fast. All of a sudden, there's lights in your rearview mirror. What goes on in your mind right then?
Oh, no.
Oh, great. Right? I'm gonna get tickets. So there's this fear response, like, oh no, right? If somebody's never seen a police car, never even been on a road, what is their experience gonna be?
Pretty lights.
Those are pretty lights. I kinda like
What's
those.
that?
Is there partying? What's going on?
Yeah.
So the very same experience, very same, police car, generated two very different responses in me and in you. So is the response coming externally? Or is it my interpretation of what's happening externally?
Let's say in my case, it's a learned behavior.
It's a habit.
It's a learned, like, last time has happened, I had to pay money and I got a ticket.
So, who's in charge of the feelings based on the experiences you're having? Where are those actually generated, right? It's from past experience, so we know what's gonna happen, right? But that's kind of conditioned us to feel a certain way based on that stimulus. One of the books we're reading in my class is The Greatest Salesman in the World. And one of the things that he says is, I make my own weather. Because he talks about, rain and snow and heat. And something that's really stuck with me. He says, I get to make my own weather. Whatever's happening externally, whether it's raining or snow, I'm in charge of how I feel about that. So can I generate my own enthusiasm? I think yes. All right. Other thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a thought on generating enthusiasm and discipline, because you talk about discipline too, right? I think the discipline part is a lot of times where the role of mentors come in and parents. Because we force discipline sometimes with assignments and with grades, and because we do that at the school. And at home, we force discipline with consequences. If you don't get your chores done, you don't blah, blah, blah. And so you have mentors, parents, who are forcing them to read things they might not choose to read, forcing them to do jobs they might not choose to do. And because of that discipline, they enter into realms and experience things they wouldn't choose to experience otherwise. They read a book they wouldn't have chosen. And then all of a sudden, they have an experience with that book. And then and then some enthusiasm is generated. And then as they get older and older and have more experiences and develop more discipline and have more enthusiastic experiences that generate enthusiasm, then they start choosing it on their own. Like, oh, I've done this before. I've read this hard book before, and this is what happened. And the more you know about something, the more excited you are about something. If you don't know anything about something, you don't know about engineering, you don't care about engineering. You know a lot about it, and all of a sudden, you're more and more excited about it, And so I do think you can generate enthusiasm, but it does require a lot of times faith and discipline.
Yes. Go ahead.
enthusiasm onto somebody that maybe is reading a book that is not so exciting to them? Do you have one? Do you have a secret there?
So, I can wear one of two hats. I can wear what I call a mediocre mentor hat, which is just do it. Here's the assignment. You're gonna get an A, or I'm gonna call your mom or dad, right? So force. It's efficient. I can usually get action. It's short term. Right? It's effective. Or I can put on my master mentor hat, which is really hard. It takes a lot more work, a lot more effort, a lot more thought. And I can figure out how to get them to want to read it first before they read it. That's my goal all the time, is figure out how can I wear the master mentor hat, have them start out wanting to read it because of how I explained to them. Maybe I tease them with the story. Maybe I tell them these are some things that you can anticipate. This is how you can grow. These are some things that you're going to experience. If I can do that in a way that starts that enthusiasm, so they go home and they're kind of excited to see what this is gonna be like. That's a totally different experience than, here's the assignment, go home, turn it in on Monday. Which I can do as a mentor, right? Put on a mediocre mentor hat and it'll happen. And there's 30 kids and it's really hard to individually figure out what motivates each one of those kids. So it's really hard with the master mentor hat, but that's the goal. That's the goal. Figure out how can they get enthused to start with, so that then they have a lot more fun with it.
So then you get to know them at a personal level is what I'm getting, so that you can help, adapt that reaching out to them.
Yeah, I need to know them a little bit as a mentor. You guys have an advantage because you already know them, and it's a disadvantage because you have a relationship with them that has some history, right? And that can be good or bad. So you know what makes them tick, what makes them move when you want them to move, and so anyway, I think a great mentor knows how to help them be motivated to want to go and read, want to go and study, want to experience that. And other mentors, other teachers just don't have the time or energy or the skill to do that yet. But I hope they figure that out, right? It's two totally different experiences. Do you have a thought?
Well, I was just gonna reinforce, our friend back mentioned curiosity. I think as parents, that's our job. That's why we do piano and soccer and baseball and skiing or ice skating. We expose our kids to as much as we can, with the hope that eventually they're gonna get that enthusiasm for one of those things. So I guess it's just, what I'm taking away, it's a matter of expose them to enough of the things in positive ways that spark can start, and then it's their idea and they can run with it.
Yeah. And as they mature, then you can start to push a little bit, right? Now we really need to figure out how the grammar works in writing, right? That's an important skill. No one wants to do that, but as you have that relationship and as they have a love of learning, and you can start to say, one day you're gonna want to write something that's really important. Maybe it's to a friend, to a grandma, maybe it's to a client or to a boss, and you're really gonna wanna know where periods go, so you have some credibility. So, when you're ready, let's start figuring out when that is, when you wanna start learning those rules. And you set the stage to anticipate at some point. Maybe it's not yet, but you're laying the groundwork, laying the expectation early on, so they know that that's gonna be part of their education in the future. Right? And there's plenty of things that are hard work in education that we don't necessarily want to sign up for. But the fruits of that far outweigh the work if we can just get over that work, right? Okay. Thanks for coming, I appreciate it. Yeah, no worries. We're wrapping up here. So I want to share, this is one of my favorite books. This is called The Healing Power of Stories. And if If you'll turn to chapter 1, or the introduction, sorry. First paragraph says, "You are your stories." So what are you reading? What's part of who you are right now? There's the whole history of all the stories in your life. You are your stories. You are the product of all the stories you have heard and lived, and many that you have never heard. They have shaped how you see yourself, the world, and your place in it. Your first great storytellers were home, school, popular culture, and perhaps church. Knowing and embracing healthy stories are crucial to living rightly and well. If your present life story is broken or diseased, it can be made well. Or, if necessary, it can be replaced by a story that has a plot worth living. Our greatest desire, greater even than the desire for happiness, is that our lives mean something. This desire for meaning is the originating impulse of story. We tell stories because we hope to find or create significant connections between things. Stories link past, present, and future in a way that tells us where we have been, even before we were born, where we are, and where we could be going. Our stories teach us that there is a place for us that we fit. In the interest of time, let's jump to the end of the introduction. So the second to last paragraph, just a couple lines up from the bottom of the paragraph, starts out with stories also bring. You see that? Stories also bring you and me together. We not only exchange stories, we are characters in each other's stories, and therefore none of us can live our story alone. Seeing our lives as stories is more than a powerful metaphor. It is how experience presents itself to us. By better understanding story and our role as characters, we can live more purposefully the kind of life that will give our own story meaning. So this idea that we are our stories, we're the product of the stories that we've lived, the stories we've heard, and I'll add the stories we've read. So what are we reading? What stories are we adding to become who we want to become? We can leave that up to chance. We can leave that up to other people telling their own stories, involving us in their stories. We can figure out what is my purpose, what is my meaning. And there are stories that will help us accomplish that, put us on that path and keep us on that path. So maybe one last comment. It's really frustrating for me, so I know what this is like. There's a couple of options. We either make it a higher priority and let some other things live, or we need to be a lot more discerning about what's right for me to be reading right now. Finding and trusting that I've got a half hour right now in this book, I'm going to extract as much as I can, so that I can be transformed by it. I can find those epiphanies. I can model something for my children. Whatever my purpose is wanting to read that, I'm going to take full advantage of that, and it's going to be right. Because I'm looking for right. It's right. It applies right now for me. This is important for me right now. Maybe it's not that book. Maybe it's not this book. It's this book. There's something here that I need to find in the next half hour. I'm going to do it and have an awesome experience. And I'm going to remember that. So that's maybe my parting lesson. Think about how there are tools, like, and this is a great way to kind of bridge that. As you're reading, you're done reading, stop, close the book, and from memory, write down everything that you can remember from. You do that more and more and more, your memory becomes better and better and better. It's a skill. And at the same time, you're adding in the inspirations that are coming along with that. It's a combination of facts and meaning. It's information, it's transformation. It's something that I need to go do. So hopefully it was helpful. I'm grateful you came tonight, a little bit later than usual, so thank you for your patience, but thanks for coming.